Cinderella. Once upon a time, a rich gentleman who was sad after the death of his wife decided to marry again, so his lovely daughter could have a mother to care for her. Unfortunately, he chose a proud and selfish woman with two daughters just like herself. She did not reveal her true character until after the wedding. She ordered the little girl to work in the kitchen and live with the servants, while she and her daughters enjoyed a life of splendor. When the child had finished her work, she used to sit in the chimney corner among the cinders, so everyone called her Cinderella. Her clothes were dirty and ragged, but she was far prettier than her sisters in all their fine clothes. One day, an invitation arrived from the palace. The king's son was giving a ball. The sisters could not have been happier. They talked of nothing but what they would wear, and ordered beautiful gowns from the best dressmakers in the land. Cinderella would have loved to go to the ball, and the wicked sisters teased her mercilessly, saying, "Wouldn't you just love to dress up in these fine clothes and ride in a carriage to the palace and dance with the rich young men, and maybe even with the prince himself?" It was known that the prince was in search of a wife, and Cinderella's mean stepmother had high hopes for her daughters. Soon the great day arrived. Cinderella was busy all day, dressing her sisters, polishing their shoes, combing their hair, and when the splendid carriage arrived to take them to the ball, she dutifully arranged their gowns so they would not crumble on the journey. When they were out of sight, Cinderella sat down alone and exhausted in the chimney corner and began to cry. Then, all of a sudden, her fairy godmother appeared and said, "Why are you crying?" "I wish I could go to the ball," sobbed Cinderella. "Well then, be a good girl and do as I say, and you shall go to the ball. Run along to the garden and bring me a pumpkin." Cinderella found the biggest and the best pumpkin and brought it to her fairy godmother, who touched it with her magic wand. Instantly, it became a beautiful golden coach. "Now, bring me the mouse trap and open it very carefully." 6 mice ran out of the trap, and as the fairy godmother touched each one with her wand, it turned into a fine dapple grey horse. Cinderella was then sent to find a rat for her fairy godmother to turn into a handsome postilion, and 6 lizards, which became a smart footman. "Well now, will that be fit to carry a lady to the ball?" asked the fairy godmother. "Oh yes, it's wonderful," replied Cinderella. "But, aha, you're wondering what you're going to wear, are you not? Let's see what would suit you." With these words, she waved her wand over Cinderella, and in an instant her rags became the most magnificent dress you can imagine. She was wearing the most costly jewels in the world, and on her feet was a beautiful pair of glass slippers. "Off you go now," said the fairy godmother. "But mind you leave the palace before the clock strikes 12, or all this magic will be undone." Cinderella promised to obey and set off in her golden carriage. When she appeared in the ballroom, everyone fell silent, and the music and dancing stopped, for she was the most beautiful young woman in the room. The young prince took her hand and led her out to dance with him. He danced with no one else the whole evening. When they sat down to the feast, he was so busy looking at her that he did not eat a thing. The dancing continued. Cinderella was so happy. She had danced every dance and did not feel tired. Then she heard a clock striking the hour. "It must be 11 o'clock. It cannot possibly be midnight yet," she said to herself, mindful of her fairy godmother's warning. But as she turned and saw the clock, Cinderella gasped with fright and ran as fast as she could from the ballroom. The prince tried to catch up with her as the clock continued to chime. As she ran through the door and down the steps towards the golden carriage, she lost one of her glass slippers. And at the very moment that the prince bent down to retrieve it, the clock struck 12. As he stood up, the prince did not see a sign of his beautiful dancing partner, and the coach and horses had completely vanished. Behind a hedge in the garden sat poor Cinderella in her ragged, dirty clothes. Beside her was the pumpkin and the mice, the rat and the lizards, scurrying away. When she was certain that the prince had gone, Cinderella made her way home on foot as fast as she could. The music and dancing would have continued until morning, but the prince was in no mood for celebration, and all the guests were sent away. He took the glass slipper to the king and said, "I will find the maiden whose foot this slipper fits, and when I have found her, she will be my bride." Cinderella's stepmother grew very excited when the prince arrived at their house. "It's only a shoe," she said to her daughters. "One of you will be able to squeeze your foot into it." But they tried in vain. It was a tiny, dainty slipper, and the sisters had big, clumsy feet. "Are there any other young women in this house?" asked the prince. "Only Cinderella," said the mother, "but she works in the kitchen, and we didn't take her to the ball." "Bring her here," demanded the prince. And then Cinderella tried on the slipper. Everyone cried, "It fits! It fits!" The stepmother and her daughters were white with rage. The prince looked into Cinderella's eyes and recognized that she was indeed the beautiful stranger he had danced with, and he took her away to be his bride. They lived happily for many years in the great palace and the princess, who later became queen, was always kind to her servants and invited them to attend the annual ball. Thank you for listening, boys and girls.